I was the husband the Sterling family all laughed at, married to the famously icy CEO of Sterling Enterprises, Serafina Sterling. 3 days after our wedding, she collapsed and woke up a different person, an innocent-eyed woman clutching a child's doll, her mind seemingly gone. Just as the vultures in her family were circling, ready to carve up her empire, a frantic, furious voice exploded in my head. Liam, you can't let them take my company. It was the roar of her soul, and I had just become her only eyes and hands. My name is Liam Miller. This was my 3rd day in the Sterling family's sprawling estate, and my 7th day as Serafina's husband. The gray stone walls of the mansion were as cold as a block of ice, and the sky overhead was just as bleak. I had never properly met my wife, not even once. To me, this arranged marriage was a heavy, rusted lock clamped around my heart. I had no illusions about it. On our wedding night, I was relegated to a guest room in a separate wing. I never even saw the bride. I was just some piece of furniture they didn't know where to put. The staff were polite to my face, but I'd always catch their hushed whispers, the mocking tone unmistakable. He's just here for the money, waiting for his payout. I pretended not to hear them. I would just sit in my room, thinking of the look in my father's eyes as I left our rundown town for this gilded cage. Just when I thought my days would bleed into one another in this quiet misery, everything changed. 3 days after the wedding, something happened to Serafina. I heard she had collapsed during an executive meeting at the corporate headquarters. By the time I was allowed to see her, she was sitting on the sofa in the center of the grand living room. She was still wearing a perfectly tailored power suit, but in her arms, she cradled a worn fabric doll that was jarringly out of place with her sophisticated image. Her eyes were vacant, lost, like an empty vessel. The formidable titan of industry was gone. What's wrong with her? Her uncle, Arthur Sterling, asked, his voice dripping with false concern that couldn't quite mask the glee in his eyes. The Sterlings formed a tight circle around us, trapping Serafina and me in the living room. Their stares were like 1,000 tiny, sharp knives scraping against my skin. Her aunt, Carol, a woman with a perpetually sour expression, spoke first. She slapped a file down on the coffee table in front of me. Liam, the company can't be left without a leader. It's clear, Serafina. Well, she's not getting better. Since you're her husband, you have to take some responsibility, don't you? If you have any sense at all, you'll sign this conservatorship agreement. Let Arthur manage the company for now, so we can focus on getting Serafina the care she needs. A chorus of agreement immediately followed her words, their greed and ambition laid bare. I clenched my jaw and ignored them. Pushing through the circle of relatives, I slowly walked over to Serafina. She kept her head down, seemingly oblivious to the drama, her fingers playing with the doll's yarn hair with the simple focus of a 3-year-old. For a moment, watching her, I almost believed she really had become a child. They were all waiting for the punchline, waiting to see the useless husband from nowhere buckle under the pressure and be cast aside. But I just knelt beside her, reaching out to gently touch her hair. Serafina, I whispered, are you okay? The instant my fingers brushed against her hair, a voice ripped through my mind. Don't sign it. Absolutely do not sign it. My company. That's my life's work. Arthur is a goddamn fox. He's been after my seat for years. Can anyone help me? Don't let them win. It was a woman's voice, anxious, enraged, and utterly helpless. It was as if she were screaming right next to my ear. It was transmitted directly into my consciousness. I flinched, my head snapping up to look around the room. The family members all wore different masks. Mockery, morbid curiosity, satisfaction, but none of them reacted. On the sofa, Serafina was still fiddling with her doll, her body perfectly still. That voice, was it hers? Was Serafina's mind still in there, trapped inside her own body? The voice continued, filled with despair and fury. Why is this happening? I can't control my body. Liam, please, you have to stop them. If this goes on, my company is finished. She was screaming, but she had no idea I was the only one who could hear her. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the shock hammering in my chest. If I was the only one who could hear the voice of her soul, then I had to do something. I stood up, placing myself between Serafina and the rest of her family. My gaze swept over Arthur and Carol, my voice cold. Who says she's not getting better? The doctors haven't even given a final diagnosis, and you're already trying to carve up her assets. Your greed is showing. Carol's face paled. Liam, what are you talking about? We're thinking about the company. Thinking about the company? I scoffed, picking up the so-called conservatorship agreement from the table. Without even reading it, I ripped it to shreds in front of everyone. I think you're thinking about yourselves. Aunt Carol, you should be careful not to overreach. You might just lose a hand. You, she sputtered, trembling with rage, pointing a finger at me. Arthur's face darkened, his expression thunderous. Liam, you've gone too far. You're an outsider. How dare you interfere in the Sterling family's business? An outsider? I stared him down, my words sharp and deliberate. I am Seraphina Sterling's legal husband. From this day forward, I act for her in all matters. The CEO's chair at Sterling Enterprises is not up for grabs. Nobody touches it. After a moment of stunned silence, the room erupted. Several of the older Sterlings were red-faced with fury. Liam? He tore up the agreement? Why is he helping me? I thought he was just. Seraphina's voice echoed in my head again, this time filled with shock and confusion. I ignored the vultures. I turned back to Seraphina on the sofa. She still held her doll, her eyes wide and uncomprehending, but the commotion seemed to have unsettled her. Her delicate fingers were unconsciously twisting the hem of her skirt. I softened my voice, leaning into promise in a low tone only we could hear, "Don't worry. As long as I'm here, they can't touch your company." The words had barely left my lips when her incredulous voice shot back in my mind. "Wait, what did you just say? Are you answering me? Liam, can you hear my voice?" I didn't turn around, but I gave a nearly imperceptible nod. A silent confirmation. This time, her voice was silent for a long moment before it returned, laced with what sounded like tears of joy. "Liam, can I trust you? They all want to take everything from me." On the sofa, Seraphina's body seemed to react. Her small hand suddenly reached out and clutched the hem of my jacket. "I'll help you," I whispered back. "I'll protect it for you." I knew this was only the beginning. A storm was brewing, with darker currents swirling just beneath the surface. And I, her husband in name only, would now have to face it all with her. Ever since that day in the living room, when Seraphina's soul discovered I could hear her, our co-op mode officially began. By day, I was the useless husband, Seraphina's glorified babysitter. "Mr. Miller, Miss Seraphina put her shoes on the wrong feet again, and she won't let us help her." A maid called out, looking troubled. I put down the company report I was halfway through and hurried over. Seraphina was sitting on a small bench in a cute pink hoodie, trying to cram her left foot into the right shoe, which was adorned with a little blue teddy bear. Her brow was furrowed in concentration. It was adorable. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Yeah," she cried, holding her arms out for a hug. "God, this is humiliating." The CEO of Sterling Enterprises whining for a hug. "Liam, don't you dare come over here." "Okay, fine, come over, I can't get this stupid shoe on." Seraphina's soul voice grumbled in my head, a mix of annoyance and embarrassment. By now, she had no one else to talk to, so she'd stopped censoring herself around me. I held back a smile, walked over, and knelt, pulling her into my arms and stroking her hair before setting her on my lap. Her body was soft, carrying the faint, pleasant scent of a grown woman. Yet she leaned on me with the complete trust of a child. She immediately relaxed against my chest, a happy smile spreading across her face. "Hey, too close. Have you no sense of personal space? I mean, I guess we are married, but this body's instincts are just so clingy." Her soul was still putting up a fight in my head, but her body just snuggled in closer. While calming her, I quickly switched her shoes to the correct feet. Our days were filled with moments like this. At mealtimes, her body would pout and threaten to cry if a tiny drop of sauce landed on her clothes. Simultaneously, the voice in my head would be screaming, "Liam, you moron. This top is limited edition couture. I've barely worn it. If that stain doesn't come out, I'll have your head." When I dressed her, she'd often squirm and resist if she thought a collar was too tight. "I told you this one is too tight. Get the other one. Yes, the third one from the right." Her voice would direct me like a remote control. At night, after her body had fallen into a deep sleep, our real work began. But even then, her sleeping form was restless. Her hand would unconsciously find and grip the corner of my shirt, refusing to let go. "Let go. This is ridiculous. Why is this body so needy even when it's asleep?" Her mental voice sounded exasperated, but her body's grip remained firm. I'd have to wait until she was soundly asleep before gently prying my shirt free and heading to the study. In these past few days, I had come to fully understand Seraphina's condition. It was as if her soul had been disconnected from her body. She couldn't control her movements, but her consciousness could drift around freely, observing everything. The only limitation was that she couldn't stray too far from her physical self. In the study, Seraphina's soul would hover beside me as we began our remote workday. The data in this report is wrong. Page 7, third line. Have my assistant verify the raw numbers tomorrow. In the 10 a.m. Meeting, Arthur will definitely push his acquisition proposal. Here's how you're going to counter him. And one more thing, the CFO, Mr. Henderson, he's close to Arthur. Find an excuse to get his ledgers. She was a tireless commander, issuing directives and analyzing the situation for me. I could almost see her standing beside me, the sharp-witted CEO, her eyes scanning the documents on my desk. My fumbling attempts as a corporate novice, however, often earned me her scorn. Ugh, this is infuriating. If I were in charge, this would take 3 minutes. I wouldn't have to watch you bumble around like an idiot. I listened to her commands, taking notes on files, responding to emails, and handling a mountain of corporate affairs. With her direct guidance, I made almost no mistakes. To the outside world, though, it just looked like the useless husband was getting by on dumb luck. Like in that meeting where we thwarted one of Arthur's traps. There's a problem with this contract. I can't sign it, I said, putting down the pen exactly as Serafina's soul instructed. Arthur's face tightened. Liam, what's that supposed to mean? Get him, Liam. Rip him apart. Serafina coached from the sidelines. I smiled faintly and did as she said. Uncle Arthur, I can't help but feel that a certain clause in this agreement might be detrimental to the company's long-term interests. It almost looks like we'd be handing over our core technology, doesn't it? I didn't spell it out, but the hint was enough. Arthur's expression froze. He never imagined I could so precisely identify the poison pill he'd hidden in the fine print. That confrontation made Arthur and his cronies more wary of me, and it gave me a tentative foothold in the company. That night, back at the estate, as I watched the serene face of the sleeping Serafina, my soul partner sighed. You know, Liam, you did pretty well today. I guess my judgment in picking you as a husband wasn't half bad. I just smiled, saying nothing. Husband, puppet, whatever I was, our relationship had transcended its origins. We were now bound together in a bizarre, intimate way. I knew that old fox Arthur wouldn't give up so easily. A bigger storm was coming. But at least this time I wasn't alone. After Serafina and I jointly foiled a few more of Arthur's schemes, his overt attacks became less frequent. But the sense of impending crisis in the air only grew thicker. I had to learn faster to prepare for the more vicious assault that was sure to come. I spent nearly every waking moment I wasn't taking care of Serafina's body buried in books on finance and management and tackling a mountain of corporate paperwork. When I dragged my exhausted body back to the bedroom late at night, Serafina would already be fast asleep, her breathing even, her face peaceful. I rubbed my aching shoulders and sat down on the edge of her bed. Are your shoulders sore? Serafina's voice was suddenly quiet, stripped of its usual sharp edge. You should get more rest, you idiot. I don't want my husband to collapse. Thanks, I said softly. It's only because you need to be in top form to protect what's mine, she said, her tone feigning arrogance, but I could hear the underlying warmth. Our relationship, in this strange state of coexistence, was slowly, subtly changing. She was no longer just the untouchable CEO. She was starting to show flashes of vulnerability she kept hidden from the world. I'll try not to touch. Who said you couldn't? Besides, that blue dress you picked out for me yesterday, it was actually pretty nice. Her voice was low, tinged with a girlish shyness. You liked it? We can wear it again tomorrow. Who said I liked it? I just thought. The color was okay. Now, stop distracting me and pull up the financial news. She sounded uncharacteristically flustered, but her tone was noticeably lighter. I couldn't help but smile. So the soul of the Ice Queen could get shy too. Another time, the notoriously flirtatious marketing director, Ms. Evans, came to report on a project. Throughout the meeting, she kept finding ways to show off her elegant collarbones and the curve of her chest, sending suggestive glances my way. She even managed to let her fingers accidentally brush against the back of my hand as she passed me a file. Mr. Miller, perhaps we could discuss the promotional strategy for this new product. In private, she cooed, her voice deliberately soft, her intentions obvious. That shameless hussy. How dare she try to seduce my husband? Liam, keep your eyes to yourself. Do you hear me? Serafina instantly blew a fuse. And her proposal is total garbage. I want you to tear it to shreds in a minute. Got it, boss. I murmured under my breath. Who are you calling boss? Don't get cocky. The voice in my head stuttered, a note of flustered indignation in it. I suppressed a laugh and adopted a serious expression. Ms. Evans, let's leave the details of the proposal for the project team to evaluate. Also, I took a step back, creating distance, my tone turning icy. This is a boardroom. We discuss work here. Please be mindful of your conduct and your attire. The smile on Ms. Evans's face froze, and she retreated from the room in humiliation. Serves her right, Seraphina's soul said triumphantly. That'll teach her. Let's see if she ever tries to pull a stunt like that on you again. That evening, as I watched Seraphina's sleeping form, I deliberately teased. You're pretty cute when you're jealous. Nonsense. I wasn't jealous. I was upholding the professional integrity of the company. Her soul immediately retorted, though her voice lacked conviction. I chuckled. Of course. Always thinking of the big picture, Ms. CEO. After a pause, I said more seriously, Seraphina, thank you for letting me see this side of you. Seraphina fell silent. After a long moment, her voice returned, tinged with melancholy. Maybe this is the only way I can be my true self. And maybe you're the only one who can see it. I gently took her sleeping hand in mine. I'll be here. I'll stay with you until you come back. You'd better be, her voice replied, now laced with a clear sense of dependence. However, the peaceful days were short-lived. Arthur's counterattack was faster and more brutal than we had anticipated. He conspired with several board members to leak a story to the press, claiming I was exploiting Seraphina's illness to embezzle company assets. The article also insinuated that the circumstances of her illness were highly suspicious. The story caused an uproar. The company's stock plummeted, and panic spread through the ranks. That bastard. That old fox Arthur. This is a coup. Seraphina's soul raged in my mind. Liam, we have to fight back now. Easy. I soothed her. He's just slinging mud, trying to force me into making a mistake. What he doesn't know is that I have you, my ace in the hole. My calm demeanor helped her cool down. Then, with her precise navigation, I quickly compiled a dossier of dirt on Arthur and his allies. At the emergency press conference, facing a barrage of flashing cameras and pointed questions, I was no longer fighting alone. It felt as if Seraphina's soul was standing right beside me, analyzing the situation in real time and feeding me the ammunition I needed to fire back. I remained composed, presenting one piece of evidence after another. This data shows that certain individuals are the ones truly attempting to plunder Sterling Enterprises. My wife, Ms. Seraphina Sterling, was aware of their activities before her illness and had already begun gathering evidence as a precaution. My voice rang out, firm and clear. I, Liam Miller, swear to you all that I have no interest in the CEO position, nor will I ever take a single cent that isn't mine. The CEO of Sterling Enterprises is, and always will be, Seraphina Sterling alone. The tide of public opinion turned in an instant. Arthur's plan had backfired spectacularly, putting him directly in the crosshairs of an internal corporate investigation and scrutiny from regulatory bodies. When we returned to the estate, Seraphina's soul was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke softly. Liam, you handled that perfectly today. You really are my husband. The last two words were spoken with a hint of shyness and a newfound respect. I bent over the sofa, looking at the body of my wife, who clutched her doll and offered me a smile of pure trust. A wave of sweetness and resolve I had never known washed over me. This was no longer just about duty. It was a love and protectiveness that came from my very core, for her body and for her resilient, brilliant soul. I will protect you, I whispered, leaning down to place a light kiss on her forehead. The you that's here now, and the you that will be. Outside, dark clouds gathered, hinting at a greater storm on the horizon. I knew that Arthur, now backed into a corner, was capable of doing something even more desperate. But whatever tomorrow brought, we would face it together. I gently pushed open the bedroom door. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow on the bed where Seraphina was curled up, asleep, looking like a child in need of protection. I sat down beside her, my fingers stroking her hair. Over the past few days, I'd noticed her body's dependence on me growing stronger. Every morning, the first sight of me would bring a pure, innocent smile to her face, and she would eagerly reach out her hands, her eyes shining with anticipation. Ugh, here we go again. Why is this body so embarrassing? Her soul voice would sigh, laced with resignation, but it lacked the sharp resistance of the early days. Just then, in her sleep, her body reached out and clutched the hem of my shirt. She shifted closer, nuzzling against my side, the corners of her mouth turning up in a slight smile as if she were having a pleasant dream. See, I think she likes me, I whispered. Her soul was silent for a moment. I suppose she does. After all, you're the only person I can rely on right now. Even if the body is only acting on instinct, it makes sense. I nodded, a warmth spreading through my chest, followed by a pang of heartache. For days now, Seraphina's body would only fall into a peaceful sleep in my arms. She would grow anxious if I left her side and light up like a child when I returned. This pure, unfiltered affection had to be connected to the longings of her soul. She yearned to be whole again, and she instinctively clung to the one person who could communicate with her. Liam. Suddenly, Serafina's soul voice became faint, intermittent. I feel something's not right. My head snapped up. What's wrong? My vision is getting blurry. Her voice sounded distant, as if coming from miles away. A chill crawled up my spine. I had noticed her soul's presence becoming more unstable lately. Her voice would cut out, and sometimes she would disconnect for a few minutes. The duration of these blackouts was getting longer. Don't be afraid. I'm right here, I said, squeezing her physical hand, hoping to offer some comfort. The doctor, did he come again today? What did he say? Serafina asked, her voice striving for calm, but I could hear the tremor of fear beneath it. I gritted my teeth. The same as before. He said the trauma to your brain was severe, but the chances of recovery are slim. Her soul let out a bitter laugh. Just what I needed. More bad news. Just then, my phone began to ring, a sharp, urgent buzz. It was the head of the legal department at Sterling Enterprises. Mr. Miller, it's bad. Arthur and his allies have filed a petition with the court to have Ms. Sterling declared legally incompetent. They're asking for Arthur to be appointed as her temporary conservator. My stomach plummeted. This was faster, more vicious than I'd anticipated. If they got conservatorship, Arthur could legally have her institutionalized and take complete control of the company. And there's more. The lawyer's voice grew more frantic. Arthur has forced an emergency board meeting. They're going to vote on selling off our most valuable asset, the semiconductor R&D division. The vote is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I hung up the phone and looked at the sleeping woman in the bed, a wave of panic washing over me. They want to sever our connection. Serafina's voice trembled. If I'm sent away to a facility, you'll never hear my voice again, and they'll gut the company. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. No, I won't let that happen. Liam, you can't fight them on your own. Her soul sounded defeated. Arthur has half the board in his pocket, not to mention all my so-called relatives. There are too many of them. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. The pressure was immense, a physical weight on my shoulders, but I knew this was no time to back down. I'm going to call my father, I said suddenly. Your father? Her soul asked, surprised. But I thought, I know, I never wanted to see him again. I never told you, but while my father may look like a small-town businessman, he has connections, deep connections on Wall Street. I turned back, my gaze resolute. Otherwise, how do you think a mismatched marriage like ours could have ever happened in the first place? Her soul was quiet for a beat, her voice complex when it returned. You would go that far for me. That's not all. I walked back to the bed and leaned over her peaceful face. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. Just then, her soul voice began to fade again, flickering like a candle in the wind, threatening to go out. Liam, I don't think I can hold on much longer. My heart seized. Serafina, don't give up. Listen to me. Her voice was broken, fragmented. If I really disappear, don't. You don't have to risk everything for me. Take what's mine and live a good life. For both of us. Don't say that. I cut her off, my voice trembling with fear for the first time. You're going to be fine. I won't let you disappear. Liam. Her soul voice suddenly became startlingly clear, as if she were using her last ounce of strength. Thank you for everything. You were never just part of a business deal. You're the most important person in my life. My eyes welled up. Serafina. And her voice started to weaken again. Under the desk in the study, there's a hidden safe. A file inside. The combination. You know it. It's important. It might help you. I shot to my feet. What file? But there was no response. My mind was filled with a terrifying, crushing silence. Serafina? I called out tentatively, dread coiling in my gut. Serafina, are you still there? Answer me. Still nothing. I looked at her sleeping body on the bed and felt a helplessness more profound than any I had ever known. Was she really gone? Shoving down my panic, I raced to the study and found the hidden safe. The combination. I knew it instantly. My hand shaking, I entered the numbers. With a soft click, the safe opened. Inside was a single sealed envelope marked for emergency use only. I tore it open. What I found inside made my eyes go wide. It was Serafina's last ace. With this, we might just have a fighting chance. The sky outside was a heavy, oppressive gray. I watched the clock on the wall. It's ticking a death knell against my eardrums. In less than 2 hours, the Sterling Enterprises board would convene the meeting that would decide Serafina's fate and the future of her company. Since last night, Serafina's voice had not returned. My mind was silent. Horribly, terrifyingly silent. Was she really gone? No. I don't believe it. I walked into the bedroom. Her body was sitting quietly on the edge of the bed in the light blue dress I'd bought for her yesterday. She was fiddling with her doll, her gaze as vacant and innocent as ever. I reached out and stroked her cheek, feeling the warmth of her skin. Tears pricked my eyes. I won't give up on you, I whispered to her. Even if the whole world does, I won't. I thought of everything we'd been through, her dependent smiles, her soul's bossy complaints in my head, her sharp-witted commands, her rare moments of vulnerability, and last night's final words. The most important person in my life. I'm taking you to the board meeting, I decided. We're going to face this together. Even if her soul was silent, I would take her body with me and fight to reclaim everything that was hers. I carefully helped her to her feet and pulled her into my arms. She leaned against me submissively, like a child with absolute trust. I quickly changed into a suit and led her to the garage. The driver did a double take when he saw me with Serafina. Mr. Miller, what are you? To headquarters, I said, cutting him off. But Ms. Sterling, she's. Drive? Now. My tone left no room for argument. The car moved smoothly through the city traffic. I looked down at Serafina, who was nestled against me. As if sensing my determination, she stared up at me with her wide, clear eyes, her hands clutching the front of my suit jacket in a gesture of pure trust. Serafina, if you can hear me, I said softly, as if in prayer, watch me. I'm going to win this. For us. She blinked, her expression blank, but her little hands gripped my jacket even tighter. My phone rang, another urgent call from my contact inside the company. Mr. Miller, the meeting has started. Arthur is already reading the resolution to declare Ms. Sterling incompetent. Most of the board is siding with him. I hung up, my heart pounding. Faster. I yelled at the driver. The car weaved through traffic. My mind replayed the contents of the file from the safe over and over. It was irrefutable proof Serafina had secretly gathered before her collapse. Proof of Arthur embezzling massive company funds, colluding with competitors, and plotting to oust her. Every transaction was documented, some even bearing his signature. This was our last stand. When we reached the corporate tower, the lights in the top-floor conference room were already on. Shielding Serafina, I walked past the stunned looks of employees and headed straight for the executive elevator. When the doors opened on the top floor, a few of Arthur's men tried to block our path. Get out of my way, I snarled, my eyes like ice. My sheer force of will made them instinctively step aside. As I reached the boardroom, I could clearly hear Arthur's triumphant voice from within. And given CEO Serafina Sterling's current mental state, she is clearly unable to fulfill her duties. For the stability of the company, the board has reached a consensus. I will be assuming the role of interim CEO, and we will proceed with the sale of the semiconductor R&D division to secure capital. I took a deep breath and threw open the heavy doors. The room fell silent. Every head turned, their expressions of shock bordering on disbelief as they saw me guiding Serafina into the room. The sudden attention seemed to frighten her. She instinctively shrank behind me, her grip tightening on my arm. Arthur, standing before the projection screen, saw his look of triumph curdle into shock, then into pure, unadulterated rage. Liam, what the hell are you doing here? And why did you bring that invalid? He spat, pointing a trembling finger at Serafina. I surveyed the room, taking in the expressions of every board member, surprise, pity, contempt. I'm here for the meeting, I said calmly. My voice wasn't loud, but carried to every corner of the silent room, as Serafina Sterling's legal husband and her sole proxy. Ridiculous, Arthur shrieked, and nobody from a backwater town with no business experience, dragging a broken woman behind him. What do you think you can possibly change? Security, get them out of here. 2 guards stationed outside the door rushed in, moving to grab me. I carefully maneuvered Serafina into a chair behind me, shielding her, then fixed my cold gaze on the approaching guards and Arthur. I'd like to see you try. In that tense, stretch moment, I felt something. The hand gripping my arm, the one I was protecting, it twitched. My head snapped down. I saw Serafina's eyes, the eyes that had been so vacant and lost, now held a flicker of light. It was faint, but it wasn't the innocent haze of before. Her soul was still there. Had the intense shock of this confrontation jolted her back? Liam, a voice, so faint it was almost inaudible, yet clearer than anything I had ever heard, bloomed like a miracle in the silence of my mind. My heart nearly stopped. It was her. Her soul was back. Serafina, I cried out in my mind. Hold on. I'm here. Her sole voice was still weak, as if it might fade at any moment, but it was underpinned by an astonishing force of will. An indescribable strength surged through me. She was here. She hadn't given up. I wasn't fighting alone. I straightened my back, facing the room full of hostiles and Arthur's twisted, snarling face. My eyes held nothing but fearless resolve. "Before you cast your votes," I said with a small smile, pulling the crucial file from my suit pocket, "I have something I'd like all of you to see." When Arthur saw Serafina's signature on the envelope, his face froze. "This file contains all the evidence of Arthur Sterling's embezzlement of company funds and his collusion with our competitors," I announced to the silent boardroom. "I invite you all to take a look before you decide whether you want to hand Sterling Enterprises over to a man like him." The file was passed from hand to hand, and with each person who read it, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. Arthur's face drained of all color. "It's fake. That's a forgery. He's lying. Whether it's fake or not can be easily verified by professionals," I said. To Serafina, I whispered, "We're about to win." Her soul's one-word response gave me infinite courage. "Arthur," I said, looking at him as if he were already a ghost, "your little scheme is over. This meeting isn't to decide Serafina's fate. It's your judgment day." The tension in the room was suffocating. Arthur watched the file circulate, hearing the whispers of doubt and accusation rise around him. The last bit of color drained from his face as he roared, "Nonsense! It's all slander. Security, throw these two out." The guards hesitated, then moved forward again, trying to haul me away. Arthur himself lunged forward, trying to shove me aside to get to Serafina, as if controlling her body would give him leverage. "Get off her!" I roared, shielding her with my body, taking the full force of the guard shoves on my back. Arthur's hand reached out maliciously, his fingers inches from Serafina's arm. And in that instant, everything changed. Serafina, who had been cowering in my arms, suddenly looked up. The eyes that had regained a flicker of light now ignited with a brilliant, blazing intensity. They were sharp, clear, and utterly commanding. The powerful aura of the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, like a dormant volcano, erupted. She shot her hand up, slapping Arthur's grasping hand away with sharp, precise force. "Don't touch him." Her voice, cool, crisp, and filled with absolute authority, was no longer in my head. It echoed, real and tangible, through the stunned silence of the boardroom. In that moment, she had finally reclaimed control. Every sound in the room ceased. It was as if someone had hit a pause button on the universe. Everyone stared, dumbfounded, at the woman who moments before had been a lost child. Now, her gaze was as sharp as a razor. Arthur's hand hung in midair, his expression one of pure, unadulterated horror. You're better." Serafina cast a glacial look in his direction, then calmly stood up. She smoothed the wrinkles from her dress, her posture perfectly erect, with no trace of her previous fragility. Her eyes swept over every person in the room, her voice quiet but heavy with an undeniable pressure. "Since when does trash like you get to make decisions about my company?" Dead silence. The board members were speechless, the guards frozen in place. She walked forward, took the file from the last board member, and without even glancing at Arthur, addressed the room. "I saw everything. I know exactly who did what while I was ill, who tried to carve up my company for themselves." "Arthur," she said, finally turning her icy gaze on him. "Embezzlement, corporate espionage, attempting a hostile takeover. This file has enough to put you in prison for a very long time. You can turn yourself in now. It will be much worse for you if you wait for the police." Arthur's face was ashen. His knees buckled, and he nearly collapsed, still babbling nonsense. "Impossible. How could you? You can't win. I still have. Whatever cards you think you have left, feel free to play them," Serafina said, her tone calm, but her words final. "But this evidence is going to the authorities. The law will decide where you belong." The room was silent. In the distance, the faint wail of sirens grew louder, a precaution my father had arranged. Every person who had mocked me, pitted her, or tried to get a piece of the pie now stared at the floor, too ashamed to meet her gaze. I walked to her side. She reached out and took my hand, her grip firm. This was no longer the grasp of a dependent child, but the solid connection of a partner. She turned to me, and in her cool eyes, I saw a complex mix of emotions, gratitude, apology, and a flicker of a soft, gentle smile I'd never seen before. "Liam," she whispered, her voice for my ears only, "thank you. From now on, we protect this family and this company together." I nodded, squeezing her hand, my heart swelling with pride. Outside the boardroom window, The heavy clouds finally broke apart. A single, brilliant ray of sunlight pierced through, landing squarely on her forehead, crowning her in light. The ordeal was over, and for the two of us, a new life was just beginning. I stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the CEO's office at Sterling Enterprises, gazing down at the bustling city below. The sun was bright, having swept away the last traces of the gloom from the past weeks. The dust had settled. Arthur Sterling and his cronies had been taken into police custody. The evidence was ironclad. They were facing serious prison time. The board of directors had been restructured. After the storm, Sterling Enterprises was finally back on course. "What are you thinking about?" A familiar, melodious voice asked from behind me. It was no longer a voice in my head, but her real, beautiful one. I turned. Serafina stood there in a sharp, elegant white suit, her hair tied back, her eyes shining with confidence and intelligence. The confused, childlike woman was gone, replaced by the dazzling, formidable queen of the business world. After her dramatic return in the boardroom, she had gradually regained full control of her body. "Just thinking that everything we went through feels like a dream," I said with a smile. She walked up to me, and right there in the bright, open office with employees occasionally glancing in as they passed, she wrapped her arms around me. "Liam," she said, her head resting on my chest, her voice soft and sincere. "I owe you a proper thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was at my most helpless. Thank you for everything you did." I hugged her back, feeling the real warmth of her body, the steady beat of her heart. A sense of profound contentment washed over me. "At the press conference this afternoon, I'm going to make a formal announcement," she said, tilting her head up to look me in the eyes. Her gaze held a tenderness I had never seen before, a softness reserved only for me. "From this day on, you are not some forgotten husband. You are the executive director of Sterling Enterprises. My husband, the most important partner in my life." I smiled. "And what about the board members? How are they holding up?" "They're lining up outside my door, begging me to give them a second chance." A sly grin played on Serafina's lips. "But I told them if they want my forgiveness, they have to get past you first." We looked at each other and laughed. Those strange, terrifying days had become a part of our story, a unique and sweet memory that belonged only to us. "Honestly," I said, unable to resist teasing her, "I kind of miss hearing you complain in my head all the time." A faint blush crept up Serafina's cheeks. She gave my chest a light shove. "Shut up. Don't you dare bring up any of that embarrassing stuff again. Right? Like how cute you were when you were jealous." I continued, pressing my luck. "Liam." She shot me a mock glare, but her eyes were dancing with amusement. "By the way, that Ms. Evans was transferred to our African branch last week. Permanently." We laughed together, sharing a secret language and a bond forged in the most bizarre of circumstances. In those fantastical, heart-pounding days, I had cared for her body while listening to her soul. She had guided my decisions while fighting for our future. Our fates were inextricably intertwined. "Mr. Miller, Ms. Sterling, here is last month's market analysis report." A sharp-looking assistant came in and respectfully handed us each a file. I took my copy and scanned a few pages, immediately pointing out several key issues. "The overall strategy here is sound, but the details need work. The risk assessment, in particular, is far too optimistic." Serafina nodded in approval beside me. "Liam's right, and the budget needs to be recalculated." She looked at me, her eyes filled with admiration. "You're a fast learner, much better than I ever expected." "Well, I had a very good teacher, one who was always right there with me, offering constructive feedback," I said with a meaningful smile. Serafina rolled her eyes playfully, but the corners of her mouth turned up. 1 year later, the golden light of sunset streamed through the windows of our new home. It was no longer the cold, oppressive Sterling estate, but a warm, welcoming sanctuary we had built together. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Serafina came up from behind and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Liam, I have a surprise for you," she said, her voice filled with a shy, joyful excitement I'd never heard before. "What is it?" I asked, turning to face her. She took my hand and gently placed it on her flat stomach. Her face was glowing. "Right here," she whispered, "is our baby." I froze, and then a wave of pure, unadulterated joy crashed over me. I pulled her into a tight, fierce hug, feeling her warmth, marveling at the miracle we had created together. "That's wonderful. Serafina, that's amazing." I was so overjoyed I could barely form a coherent sentence. "Hey," she murmured against my chest, her voice playful. "If it's a girl, does this mean you'll have to take care of a little Serafina all over again?" I leaned down and kissed her forehead, my heart full of love and hope for our future. I'm not afraid, I said. This time, we'll take care of her together. She'll have the best of both of us. Outside, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors. The storms of the past were behind us. There would surely be new challenges ahead, but as long as we stood side by side, there was nothing we couldn't face. Because together, with trust and love, we had already created a miracle that was uniquely ours.